No Joe. That's the big news today. It is S&L, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you Monday through Friday. We do it at 4 o'clock on Friday because that's when the final injury report comes out. Not great news. Not all bad news, though, for the Texans. Joe Mixon going to be out on Sunday. He's not going to go. Despite trying to go last Friday, he's just They say he's just not ready. He's just not ready to go. So the Texans will have to try, and I emphasize try to establish some sort of a run game without Joe Mixon.
Yeah, they've been terrible trying to run the football without Joe Mixon. They have had 32 carries by running backs in the past 2 games, and they've had just over 100 yards. They're averaging 3.25 yards per carry with running backs. And it's not like I'm like leaving CJ Stroud out and like some of these gimmicky plays out and it gets like a whole heck of a lot better. It doesn't. But just from a running back standpoint, they're not running the ball well. Cam Akers doesn't have juice to his game. JJ Taylor doesn't make great decisions with the ball. I'm guessing we'll see a little bit more Daria Gumbawale than we have been seeing. But I mean, we're here in week 5 talking about Daria Gumbawale being a guy that's carrying the ball a lot for you in a game against the Bills. That's not good.
No, it's not. And I think we've gotten to a point where there's the acceptance, I think, has arrived where they're not going to be able to run the ball without Joe Mixon. And I think they understand that. And I talked about Bobby Slowick's comment yesterday about where he said, the clock's kind of ticking and we got to figure it out. And a lot of people are like, well, what the hell does that mean? I mean, like, right? I think they're eventually just going to have to accept the fact that because D'Amico insists they need to be able to run the ball. I just don't know that it's realistic, and I think that's what Bobby Slowick means when he says that. I also asked Bobby Slowick about the drop off after Mixon, and here was what Bobby Slowick had to say about that live here on the Friday edition of S&L.
I wouldn't say it has really anything to do with the running backs we have. I think, Joe Mixon is Joe Mixon, Daria is Daria, Cam is Cam. I would tell you, Joe, when he runs, he's extremely physical, and he plays with absolutely zero hesitation. And it's probably his greatest strength, not to mention he's a large individual, that plays that way. And that shows up on tape. He's just very convicted in how he does everything.
Yeah, right. And I mean, that's just where we're at.
So let's go through this.
It is about the running backs.
So nobody has Joe Mixon's size. Nobody plays with his conviction. And nobody has his vision with the ball. So, yeah, it's pretty tough when Joe Mixon's not in there.
Yeah, it's really tough. And I kind of want to ask the question just when it comes to Mixon's value, like just based on where this team is, what we think like the depth is at each position. Like, where is Joe Mixon when it comes to most valuable Texans? In other words, like, for lack of a better term, you have to sacrifice this guy and play without this guy instead of Joe Mixon. Like, how many guys are ahead of Joe Mixon on that list? Obviously, the quarterback is there. Like, CJ Stroud's number 1. I would say Nico Collins is on the list, too. I would say that's a fact. I wouldn't put a single offensive lineman on here because I think Joe Mixon adds more value to them than they do to him. So I wouldn't put any offensive linemen. Maybe we can talk about Stingley and maybe we can talk about Will Anderson, but I think it's at least a discussion. I think Joe Mixon's one of your 4 or 5 most valuable pieces, and it could even be 3 or 4 when you factor in just what he brings to the table and the drop off after him. Because if you're without Will Anderson or Daniil Hunter, you have the other guy. If you're without Derek Stingley, you at least have Kamari Laster. Now that might look a lot different than what we're used to. I would probably put Stingley in the top 3, but I would say
Mixon's 4.
I would arrive at 4 with Mixon for sure. And I could hear 3. I could hear 3 if you want to bring that to the forefront.
I mean, it's 4, and I would put Stingley, Collins, and Stroud as the guys that are ahead of him. And
but even with Nico, you still have Diggs and Dell.
True. But I mean, they have not
the best receiver in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he's number 1 by 100 yards
statistically.
Yeah. So and how good would those guys be if he wasn't on the field? Okay, yeah. Like I think that's a big question. So he's
been all right.
I mean, they can't run the football without him. Like that's they are a one-dimensional offense without Joe Mixon. And even if they have a acceptable day, it's still not going to be a rushing attack where you feel like they can grind out the Bills or chew clock or move the chains a whole bunch. They may just be able to produce acceptable results on the ground and not have a average good or good day in them without Joe Mixon. And that shows you his value, and that brings to the table. And I don't believe Dameon Pierce is going to play. And even if Pierce was playing, he's not Joe Mixon. He's not going to fix everything. He's had 3 carries this season. So even if he was in there and was available, that doesn't give me some sort of great hope for the rushing attack. They're going to be predicated on what C.J. Stroud, these receivers, and other pass catchers can do.
I'm going to put it this way, and this is just how I look at the Joe Mixon situation. CJ is the straw that stirs the drink. If you don't have CJ, you don't have hope. You can have a depleted offensive line. You can still win a game without CJ. You can be without any of the receivers. You can still win a game with CJ. You can be without Joe Mixon. You can still win a game with CJ. He's the absolute hope. But I will say this. I think the drop-off from CJ Stroud to Davis Mills, it might be less than Joe Mixon to his backup array of running backs. And I'm being dead ass serious. I'm being dead ass serious. That's how bad I think the backup running back spot is. And it shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, this isn't like, I guess the good thing about this, the good news, bad news about this is, like, when we talk about the offensive line and we say the offensive line's underperforming, we're basically saying they get no return on investment. Like, you've invested every type of asset you can possibly invest in the offensive line. It doesn't work out. They ignored the backup running back position. They just flat out did. They just flat out ignored the backup running back position. They saw Dameon Pierce last year and they said, oh, well, we'll try again. Cam Akers just happened to be available after Mixon got hurt. So you brought him in, and Dary's been here for a while, and Dary belongs on an NFL roster, but I mean, Dary's never going to be someone that you want to rely on to carry the load. So
right.
I think that's just where they are when it comes to the drop-off from Mixon to the backup running backs.
It is something that does feel like it could have been addressed. I mean, D'Amico Ryan said in, I think it was OTAs or minicamp or around there. He said he was comfortable with the 1-2 that is Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. And so it's like, I don't know that I was ever comfortable with that 1-2. And then, nothing changed from that standpoint. Pierce was going to be the backup. He's been hurt for weeks now, and we're not sure he's going to play. I don't think he's going to play Sunday. And even if he does, this was a guy that was unplayable at the end of last year. And I don't know that a ton of stuff has really changed for him. So could they have done something different? Absolutely. A different veteran body, another body, a draft pick perhaps. Yes, they could have done something different when it comes to those that backup running back situation. I mean, and each of those guys has their deficiencies. I mean, Akers doesn't have burst. When he does turn the jets on, he can't change direction. J.J. Taylor doesn't have great vision. And then Dare Ogunbowale, like you said, he belongs on a roster, but he's a third down back. He's a pass blocker. He's not a guy that you're handing the ball to 12, 14 times in a game.
We'll get to Tank Dell. We'll hear from Tank Dell. Looks like Will Kunkel was right. Tank Dell is going to play. So shout out to Will for calling his shot there and getting that right. But first, let's before we revisit like the other names on the injury report, not named Joe Mixon, let's look at what's going on with Buffalo. And the good news for Texans fans, they're banged up. Their most explosive receiver, the biggest threat that we've heard the most about Shakir, he's out.
Yep.
Von Miller, we already know he's suspended. They're significantly banged up at safety. The Bills are very, very banged up heading into this game. And oh, by the way, Josh Allen's kind of been laboring a little bit too. He's a little bit sore too. So everything that we just said about Joe Mixon, if you're laying out the state of the Bills, there's probably just as much concern, I won't say panic, but just as much as concern with the Bills when it comes to their injury situation as there is with the Texans without Mixon.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same level because they could still operate as a passing offense without Shakir, but they lose their top guy, top target guy, top receptions, top yards, most touchdowns, explosive plays. Like, that's their guy. He's not playing. And so 2 huge key pieces of the offense. And so what are the Bills going to lean on? They're not going to lean on those outside guys. They're going to lean on the tight ends and James Cook. What are the Texans going to lean on? They're going to lean on their wide receivers. So 2 huge key pieces from each offense gone in this matchup with Mixon out for the Texans and Shakir. And then the Bills, I would never want to be missing 2 starting defensive linemen against C.J. Stroud. They're missing Ed Oliver, and then they're missing Von Miller. That's not an injury. He got suspended. But that's 2 of their 4 starting defensive linemen out for this matchup. One of their backups on the defensive line's out, and they're missing a starting safety. So it's like, ugh. Like, that's a bad matchup to be missing those guys against C.J. Stroud and this passing attack, and their slot cornerback and one of their best linebackers. Both those guys are banged up. Like, so they are as hurt as the Texans in a different way in this matchup.
Well, yeah, and the Texans O-line can use all the help they can get, and they're giving it to them in Buffalo for a number of reasons. So there you go. That's the good news. Let's pull up the rest of the Texans injury report. Derek Barnett, he's going to be out. He's got a hurt shoulder, so the depth at D end a little bit more thin. Jake Hansen, he's questionable.
Not a little bit more thin. They no longer have depth at defensive end.
Yeah, so that's gone.
Jerry Hughes is out too.
Jerry Hughes is out as well. So we'll see the versatility of these guys, or maybe we'll just have to see a heavy dose of Hunter and Will for sure. Heinisch and Horton, both questionable, both them return. They were both full participants. Tytus Howard did not practice today. He's questionable. We're talking about a hamstring. Do we dismiss Tytus Howard? I don't know if you fully dismiss him. We were talking about this before open locker room today, and I think there's been one player in the D'Amico era that has played when not practicing on a Friday, and that was Steven Nelson last year, and you kind of observed that he was working out on the side. So that was a good observation by you last year, but that's the only time that we've seen a guy not practice on Friday and then be on the field on Sunday. He's not moving around. I'll say this. I always say he's not moving around like someone who you just can completely count out.
Right. Yeah. The Howard one is very interesting because if he doesn't go, then you've got roster gymnastics that you've got to figure out. Like, if Tytus Howard can go, then he's the right tackle. Fisher's ready in case, Howard gets hurt in the game. But if Howard can't go, then it's full on roster gymnastics, because with 2 defensive ends out, you've got to probably promote Solomon Byrd for your defensive end spot. So your backups would be Solomon Byrd, the rookie out of USC that they drafted and have on the practice squad, and Rashad Weaver, who's on the active roster. Those are your backup defensive ends. So there's one promotion. No Pierce, no Mixon. You got to promote J.J. Taylor. There's your other promotion. So if Howard's out and you've already used your 2 promotions, then you can't promote David Sharp as your backup tackle. That means if Fisher or Tunsil gets hurt, Nick Broker's a starting tackle all of a sudden. And that's a pretty scary situation.
Yeah, it's a scary situation. We got a little bit of that in the preseason. Wasn't lovely. But it did happen.
So the Saturday elevations on the practice squad should give you an indication on the likelihood of Howard's availability for Sunday. So be watching Landry's Twitter account, my Twitter account. We'll tweet about it as soon as it happens. So the Saturday elevations will give you a peek into maybe how good or bad Tytus Howard's feeling.
All right, I'm going to confess something real quick.
You don't care?
No, kind of.
Okay, well, I care if Tytus Howard's going to play or not.
I want to see Fisher. I want to see Fisher for a whole game. I want to see what it looks like. I do. I want to see what it looks like, Cody. I don't want to see him thrown to the Wolves on a 3rd down and then having to finish the first half against a already in a rhythm Josh, whatever the hell hyphen name he has, Allen. I want to see what Blake Fisher looks like over the course of a whole game. I just want to see it. I want to see what it looks like. I'm sorry. It might be a disaster, but I just want to see what it looks like. Sorry. I'm not sorry.
Man, that's Rousseau's side. That's their best defensive end that's left on the team. If he's got to go, good thing he's on the team, but I'd rather see Howard get the start at this thing and just see where it goes.
I want to see what Fisher looks like. Ready to go. Put the kid out there. Let's see what he looks like.
Wow. So what do you do then What do you do then from a backup perspective? No fourth defensive end?
I don't know what they're going to do at D end, man. I really have no idea what they're going to do at D end.
Like, look, if you just tell me, hey, like Anderson and Hunter are just going to play more, like, okay, I'm fine with that.
That's a lot, though. That's a lot.
But it's not till back of the season when defensive ends really rev up that number really high. Like I went through snap counts around the league to see how many defensive ends were in the top, say, 100 or so. I think there's like 2. Like defensive ends do not play as many snaps as linebackers and safeties and corners. So, they have a rotation. They have a way they operate their defense. So Rashad Weaver can't be the only guy coming in for those guys. I guess at one point Mario Edwards has played defensive end, so maybe
that's what he was before the Autry suspension. Edwards was a D end on the roster, and that was his position. So I think that's part of what we'll see. We'll see some Edwards in and out, inside, outside. Maybe you get Heinisch in there, and Edwards is.
Well, that's a roster move. You gotta make a roster move if you're gonna put Heinisch on.
There's gonna be a roster move tomorrow. Like there's gonna be roster moves. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
They got I mean, they have to at this point, especially with Hughes and Barnett out and the Tytus situation. You have to. There's zero doubt. I want to see what Fisher looks like. I definitely want to see what he looks like. I saw someone in the comments.
I just was not impressed with and I understand, and you laid it out. He came out in the middle of a game, no time to warm up, and it's the one of the best pass rushers in the AFC South that he's going against. Yeah, so I get that.
In a rhythm.
I get that. And so it'd be very different if he knows, Friday afternoon, hey, Blake, you're going to get to go at right tackle. Like it's very different. I totally get that.
Way different.
I just wasn't impressed with the 20 or so snaps that he had.
Well, you're not going to be impressed. There's going to be some growing pains. Have you been impressed with Tytus Howard's 20, 25 snaps?
Well, it looked better than the 20 snaps that Fisher had.
I mean, yeah, I would hope so. I mean, there's going to be some struggles, but I mean, I think the kid can find his groove.
I'd rather him find his groove against somebody else.
Well, what if he goes out there and puts together a hell of a performance?
Well, then that'd be a great job.
Yeah, I want to see.
How likely is that to occur?
I don't know. I mean, he's going to have to do it eventually. Like it's Tytus Howard and Laremy Tunsil aren't playing all 17. I hate to spoil that for you. Like that, Tytus Howard has had trouble staying on the field. So it's going to happen eventually against the Bills. I saw someone in the comments said I would rather him play against the Titans than the Bills. I might want to look into that D line a little bit more than you probably have with the Titans. I don't know if that would be the ideal scenario either.
I mean, it'd be much better to have him have to play against, say, New England next week than the Bills this week. But look, he's on this roster for this reason, because Tytus Howard and Laremy Tunsil get hurt. So if you have to put him in there, the organization clearly has the faith in him to go in there and play. So put him out there at right tackle. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I just don't think Tytus has been very good. That's my argument. My argument is, if Tunsil were out, I wouldn't say this. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here saying, man, I really got to see what Blake Fisher has if Laremy can't go. I wouldn't say that. But with Tytus, let's see what he's got. Go out there and hold it down, young man. Go to bed knowing that you're going to be the starter. Get to the stadium. We saw you get all those reps in training camp for a reason. Get your ass out there. Make Nick Caserio look smart. Make all us morons that were just dumbfounded that Nick Caserio drafted a tackle. Make us all look like idiots. And let's see what Blake Fisher's got. Sign me up for it.
Well, so I didn't expect to come down with me being on Team Tytus, you on Team Fisher, but here we are.
Yeah. I'm going fishing on Sunday, baby. I'm going fishing.
Hopefully you don't catch a Gregory Rousseau career game, because that's what Josh Hines Allen would have had if Fisher had played the rest of that game.
I feel like Josh Hines Allen might have had that. No, even if Tunsil had stayed in the way that he was going, honestly.
Well, the only 2 quarterback hits that were allowed by Fisher. So
yeah. I mean, it was definitely a tough spot for him, and they also had his ass going in there at tight end and stuff, and that was not that looked uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we're bringing you in heavy sets. Go out there and
get in there
for Laremy now.
That was useless. It felt like that was useless. But
that was weird.
The 17 that counted that he was in there, and I understand the caveat. No warm ups, tough job. It didn't look good.
Tank Dell, he met with the media. He's going to go. Let's hear from Tank Dell. A little quick media session with Tank, talking about everything from uniforms to having to sit and watch to what he thinks about the Buffalo Bills. Here's Tank Dell.
that's what come with the game. Just had to keep my head up, keep focusing on what's next to come. So just in the treatment room every day, in the training room, and just get myself together.
What do you think of the matchup? They have a defense that seems to not give up a lot of big plays.
Yeah, they play top down. We've been doing a lot of studying on them. So they play top down. We just got to take what they give us, and if the opportunity presents itself, do what we got to do. But just make plays, transition, upfield. If you do get a check down, transition upfield, just take everything they give us and just play our football, our brand of football.
2 3-1 teams, first place.
Yep.
What do you feel about this? Just as far as like people call this early in the year like football reference, they say it's a big game.
Say it again.
They say it's a big game.
Yeah, I feel like every game is a big game. Football, NFL football. I feel like it's no easy team to play. Like we just played Jaguars. They was on 3 coming in or something like that, and we went down to the wire. So every football game is a big football game in the NFL. So.
You've been you said last year. Worried about getting stuff going this year. We know we need to get Tank the ball. Is there anything different that the team needs to do to get
Bad question by me.
More out of when they get you the ball?
It's not I just go out and try to make the plays that come to me. Bobby, he's going to dial it up. He's going to call what he needs to call to win the game. So you got to keep focusing on winning the game. That's all.
You've been a part of some big comebacks with CJ. What's it like for you watching? Like, what are you doing when you're watching the game last week unfold and not being able to be out there?
Man, I was told him, like, this the moment you made for it. Like, when I was on the sideline, me and Joe Mixon was saying the same thing. Like, you made for this. We already know what you're going to do. And he went out there and won the game for us. So, it's a regular day in the office for me. I know how he operate and how he do things. So, I knew what was going to happen.
Tank, I know Stefon is known for his ism, keep y'all encouraged and the huddle and stuff like that. But where do you feel like his presence is felt most among this team?
Everywhere, like you said, like in the huddle, in the locker room, on the field making plays. He do it all. So I just feel like everywhere it's balanced everywhere. So.
Tank, after watching film, what do you think that you all are missing to put the offense up to the next level?
I don't feel like we got the guys in the room to do it. I would say like the penalties, we got to just cut down on the penalties. I feel like they'd be making some of our drives like we can go put up points and then it's 3rd and 20. So we just got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot and go out there and just keep making plays and let the game come to us.
A lot of people talk about your on-field style. I saw you were talking with Bussin' with the boys, top 3. Do you like these uniforms?
Yeah.
Where would you rank them on the 4?
Top 2.
Top 2.
Top 2, not 2. There you go. Okay. So these are his favorite.
Was that the full interaction?
No, I didn't listen. I interrupted him and said, what's one? But yeah, he said top 2, not 2.
I was shocked these were his favorites.
Yeah, I thought he'd go all red, but yeah, he's.
I think I would tell you that the majority of the locker room feels like are the all reds. I don't know that everybody's H-Town blue.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see how they look. I think they're going to look pretty good. The Reds will look legit as well. Gunner asks Cody and Landry, if I told you this weekend's game against Buffalo was going to turn out like Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and didn't tell you who wins, would you take it? So in other words, would you take a hard-fought loss in the manner in which Tampa Bay lost, as opposed to
that made
going with the win?
I mean, pretty good amount of offense.
Yeah, I mean, so you're allowing Josh Allen to throw for 500 on you? That would be a tough.
I'm out.
Yeah,
or CJ throws for 500 in a comeback.
Yeah, if CJ throws for 500 and they win like that, yes. But if you tell me that this defense allows 500 yards passing to Josh Allen, and I know he's better than Kirk Cousins, yeah, I don't know that they need that on their plate. So I would be out, but that's a good question.
Landry, I have zero fear of anything on the Bills offense that's not Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. Zero fear. Curtis Samuel
you have
filling
no
in.
Respect for Curtis Samuel.
For good reason. Curtis Samuel filling in for Shakir doesn't scare me. Keon Coleman, one of my favorite draft prospects, doesn't scare me on the outside versus these DBs. And then whoever the hell the other guy is, Mac Hollins? What is Mac Hollins? I don't care who the DB is covering him. It's like those guys don't scare me. I'm worried about Allen's legs. I'm worried about James Cook running it down their throat. And I'm worried about Dalton Kincaid over the middle as just a dynamic weapon at tight end. Like outside of that, nothing on this Bills offense really scares me.
I'm worried about Samuel.
Man, I think the idea of Curtis Samuel is more dangerous than the execution of Curtis Samuel.
No, I don't disagree with you in most situations, but I think with this squad, with some of the matchups, like I think if they are able to get Samuel on Petrie, I think that's something that they can take advantage of. And I think it's just kind of an opportunity for him. But I'm with you. I was actually open to, before the offseason started, to Samuel perhaps being like something that the Texans could add. And this was before the Diggs trade and all that. Sure. So I get what you're saying. And when Samuel came into the league, it's kind of hard to separate what he was talked about to what he currently is. But I don't think, with the way that the Texans match up with him, I can't just completely dismiss him stepping in for Shakir and not making some plays.
Yeah, a couple of plays here or there, but I mean, he's not some sort of game changer.
No, he's not. I mean, he's not Shakir. I mean, it's a drop off. Shakir was probably the player that was most talked about this week. Maybe even more than Allen. I don't know if it's just because Allen's so good, like Allen was talked about, but the Shakir element was talked about quite often, just in the locker room and with coaches and stuff like that. So yeah, you take him away, you'd rather face Samuel than Shakir. I'm saying that, but I don't completely dismiss it just with the way that this squad's built.
Well, to use an analogy or an example that you used earlier, Samuel's a lot closer to Shakir than any of the backup running backs are to Joe Mixon. So it's not like it's gone from a essential piece of the offense to a net zero.
If I told you that you could make this trade, like in the fantasy world that we often live in, where we're throwing out hypotheticals and stuff, if I told you that you could trade the injuries the Bills have for the injuries the Texans have, would you make that trade?
So I get a healthy Mixon, but I lose an end and I lose a defensive tackle.
Yes, but it's not the most impactful ones. But and they're losing Shakir. I guess we'll count Von Miller as an injury.
Yeah.
Ed Oliver against this interior line, I would say yes. Like that, I say all that to say, although Mixon is very, very valuable, we haven't seen them without Shakir really that much. So
yeah,
there's that element. But I would probably lean yes.
I'd still take the Texans situation, just because I need those defenders. I need those defenders to be able to stop Josh Allen or try to stop or slow down or force him into a mistake or something. Like I need those defenders.
Yeah, I think the Texans are definitely the healthier team in this matchup. I would say they're definitely the healthier team. And you're also getting the Tank Dell element, which is something that we haven't really seen all three guys clicking this year. But you take away some safeties and you put in the fact that CJ Stroud's still calling him one of the best receivers in the league and they're buddies and all that. I would not sleep on Tank Dell making his impact known early. I think they get Tank Dell involved early in this game.
I think we saw a little bit into sort of the expectation from the Bills defense when Slowick was asked about Tank Dell, because he talked about like, hey, if teams start to take away this guy, and Tank's getting one-on-one matchups, like he's going to go win those and we got to get him the ball. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what he said. And I wonder, we are going to see more attention on Nico Collins this week than we have seen from other teams. I do. I believe so. Yes. I believe so. Yes. They and this whole, like, if the Bills try to play the Texans the way that teams have, on defense for the past few weeks, where they just, force them to try to run the ball and they let them live over the middle. Like, this is a Texans team that should dice them up over the middle. Nico on the in breaking, Stefon Diggs from the slot, the occasional Tank Dell from the slot. Like, they should be very successful over the middle of the field against this Bills defense, if that's how the Bills try to approach this thing.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. What are the big adjustments you think before we get out of here that the Texans need to make based on the injuries from the way they attack things?
The defensive end rotation is going to be very intriguing because they like to put Barnett in there at a defensive tackle sometimes on pass rush downs. He obviously plays for Hunter or Anderson from time to time. Hughes doesn't as much, but he does every now and then. So the defensive end rotation is pretty intriguing to me. But outside of that, they've got every starter that they have had for the past few weeks healthy on defense. So is there anything you haven't tried running the football to try to get this thing going?
I'm fearing just like a CC's buffet of reverses.
Steven Sims and Tank Dell and a Xavier Hutchinson and a Stefon Diggs handoff.
You're positive Steven Sims is going to be active?
I'm not.
I'm asking. You think?
I'm not. No, I was just using. I mean, he got a handoff last week for 0 yards, so I was just using him as an example.
Yeah, we'll see if good old Steven Sims is even active, man. That's something to keep an eye on as well.
Will Diggs score a touchdown against his former team?
I think he will. I think Stefon Diggs does score a touchdown against them, and he's got 3 touchdowns on the season, 2 in week 1, and then he had the rushing. Yes, I do think that Diggs gets the end zone, finds the end zone.
Okay,
I believe so. All right, man. Appreciate everyone for coming through. It's been a very active week. No Mixon. Bills banged up. The line right now, Bills -1. Don't know where to go with that. It's going to be an electric environment. Bills Mafia going to be rolling deep.
Yep.
Going to be rolling real deep. Was at the store, saw some Bills Mafia folks. They look ready to boost. It's going to be a fun game. I think it's a massive game. I think it's an opportunity to measure yourself against the Bills. Appreciate y'all for coming through. This has been S&L. We'll talk to you Monday, 8 a.m. Reaction Monday. Always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon.